All right, everyone, we are live. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Richard Taylor TV. Today, we're with Final Cut Pro Radio TV, and we have a very special guest. Now, are you looking for the guest?
Yeah, I just wanted to know where he or she was.
It's Bill Davis.
Oh, shoot, that's me. That's a disappointment.
Now, the question is it Bill Davis from California or Bill Davis from D.C.? Because I always get you guys confused.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that there's two? It's the curse of a traditional name, and it's not a problem, but there was another one all through my high school years, and I used to just keep like, tell me he's a brainiac and tell me my scores will get mixed up with his. And he turned out to be at about the same level of everything in high school that I was, so neither of us got an advantage for that. But it's interesting having a real common name where I share this with a gigantic group of people all around the world, and I'm fine with that. Helps me keep below the noise floor in terms of my profile.
Exactly. So you're Bill Davis from California then?
Yes, California now. Arizona for a long time. I was in Scottsdale for decades, and then my wife and I just moved to San Diego because we loved San Diego. We'd been vacationing over here and decided this would be a cool place to live for this portion of our lives.
Excellent. So how's the weather?
It's been, overall it's fabulous, and part of that is that it's a big change from Arizona weather, which was constantly sunny and warm and bleeding into hot and then insanely hot a lot. Now, all of us who lived in Arizona got used to that. We all had, Mr. Carrier's air conditioning.
Sure.
And we learned the tricks of living in a real desert, hot microclimate. But this is nice. Now, the last 4 or 5 days, it's been raining here in Southern California, and you've probably seen on the news tons of things. There's a little kind of we used to call them arroyos back in Arizona, but a gully, a canyon. We're probably 600 or 700 feet above that on a ridge.
Okay.
And we had flood warnings today down in that arroyo area, and they were saying, there's some roads that are going to be blocked off down there. So it has rained more here, and we're going through a spate of rain right now, but I actually love it.
You do love the rain?
I'm enjoying it. I didn't have that much of it here, and I got a cozy place here, so it's just a process of I'm going to enjoy something different.
So, what are those guys? What do you think about what they've done to our schedule at NAB? They're messing it up. Everybody's messing it up. It's like juggling, right? Isn't it? They're juggling.
Yeah.
They're juggling.
Look, we're Final Cut Pro 10 editors, at least a lot of us, right? We're supposed to embrace change. Change is part of life, and change accelerates in this era, and we have to learn to manage this. I will tell you, I am more excited about this NAB than I have been about a bunch of NABs. And I am a little bit connected into some of the people, particularly LumaForge, who are putting this together. And so I've been talking to them, and I'm hearing some of the behind-the-scenes things that they're trying to pull together. And I just have to hugely send props to Sam Messman and all the folks at LumaForge. There's a half a dozen or a dozen of them I could name. But they have what I think is an old users group guy is the best attitude toward this I have ever heard, which is let's put on something for users, for community. They're incredibly community focused. And, they're having to spend money to organize this and put it out there, but they're willing to do that. And I think this is really a watershed year. I've been working with Mike Horton. I helped him put on the very, very first Las Vegas. Wasn't even the Super Meet then. It was the LAFCPUG meetup. The first year we had them, probably 15 or so years ago. And I have worked with Mike and then later with Dan through all of these years. And I've been backstage and I've seen the Super Meet grow from small to big. And the reason it did that is it performed a really important community service. I mean, the people come to NAB, and NAB is overwhelming. You've been there.
Right.
There's just too much, and you have to figure out a path through it. And for editors, for people back then involved in Final Cut Pro, but of course it's gone wider than that now, and this year will be no exception. There will be Premiere people and Avid people and whatever involved in the Super Meet. But the thing is, it was always about community. It was always about a place where you could go and shake hands with and talk to somebody who hopefully knew more about things that you were interested in than you did, and learn from them and share ideas.
Right.
And over the course of years, I can easily say that NAB, after the era that I got heavily involved in the super meets, and that changed my career. I have a Rolodex with a bunch of people that I consider pretty important in the industry now. And the only reason I have that is because I met them starting, 15 years ago, and then saw them again 14 and 13 and 12 years ago. And they started to have conversations with me, and I developed friendships with them. And man, in terms of a way to build your professional database, just in terms of connections.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
What users groups did originally was that. It was like, nobody knows how to operate this new high-tech stuff. Let's get together with a bunch of stuff, and that's our users group. And we'll, I don't know how to punch those buttons and figure that out, but you do. So tell me about that. And the next time that you have some problem that you don't know how to fix, I've hit that problem. I'll tell you how to fix it. And man, the community makes you stronger, nothing but stronger. So I'm just a huge advocate for what originally Mike did with the Super Meet, and then now what the guys at LumaForge are doing, and what other groups are. I mean, there's others or other software, but I just love this community thing. It's really powerful, and it really can help your career.
So what day are you getting in?
Well, typically in the past, I've gone on Saturday, and that's mostly because I've been technically a reporter for many NABs, and so on a press pass, I would go, and if you don't know about the whole scope of NAB, it really starts on Friday before the show opens, and there's all sorts of learning potentials. I mean, on Friday, the people who do those things will have operate your drone seminars out by the dam, by Hoover Dam out there, or other kinds of things that go around NAB that aren't part of the show floor. And there's often classes on Saturday. You can go through the certification processes for various software. So there's a wide range of things you can do just for adult continuation learning stuff. And you can learn stuff you don't know about from pros as a part of NAB. Then the show opens. So I used to go on Saturday most consistently, get there Saturday about 10 o'clock, and then I would stay all the way through Thursday night. And the reason I stayed for Thursday, in the era when I was building my equipment thing, I'm not sure it's as big a deal now, but when I didn't have a lot of equipment and I wanted to get really good stuff pretty cheap, you could go up to the Airy booth or the Sennheiser booth, and you could make a pitch, hey, do you really want to take this particular C-stand and put it on the truck and ship it back? Or how about I give you, how about I cross your palm, and you have to do it with whoever's running the booth, and it has to be legit, but you could get a really nice C-stand and grip arm for 50% of what you could get it from a local deal. I don't think you can still do that, or maybe you can, maybe you can't. But those were the kind of tricks you learned as an insider going for years. Yeah, and I have to filter this through what has been announced. There will be things for people who are interested in nonlinear editing, and things for people who are specifically interested in Final Cut Pro 10. There will be things to do on Monday and Tuesday night. I am absolutely sure. Monday has always been a little difficult for me because I've got like 3 or 4 things that I wanted to go through on Monday night after I had been at NAB for a while. And you have to kind of pick and choose. And it would not be unusual for me to be at one gathering at 6 o'clock and maybe stay for an hour and a half, then go to another one from 7:30 to 9, go to something else from 9 to 9:30, and then end up not even necessarily at the Peppermill at 10, but maybe there or someplace equally notable as a gathering spot where I'd run into a lot of friends that I made over the years. So there's usually not, it's what one thing are you going to do? There's a lot of things. I can say with confidence that for nonlinear editors, and particularly for people who are interested in Final Cut Pro and what's going to be happening with it coming up, there will be things Monday and Tuesday night that are going to be really fun. The way they're coming together, I'm really looking forward to this year. Really looking forward to it. Yeah, definitely go online and see what's publicly available. I know there are quite a few people working very hard behind the scenes to find really exciting and really cool people to put on stage at these events. And, it's you can't pre-announce and say, because the agreements aren't all signed and we don't know everything for sure. And nobody wants to put out bad information and promise that, this person who you really want to maybe sit in an audience and listen to them talk, that they will be there if they can't be, if there's some other compelling reason they can't be. But go ahead. It's always been the night before the super meet. There will be something the night before the super meet. I don't know the big details. I haven't talked to Steve Martin and his wife nor Mark Spencer about what's particularly happening with that brand this year. But there will be a gathering, and I can absolutely say that those gatherings of those people that you've been to, there will be something on Monday night that you can go to and have a lot of fun. Yeah, there was a thing I liked about it more. There was a thing I liked about it less. The thing I liked about it more was we could walk to it from the convention center at the hotel next door. So we didn't have to do the cab shuffle, which we had to do when it was at the Hard Rock on the Strip, which was utterly unwalkable. So it was great to be able to go something. The presentation, for Final Cut Pro 10 editors, the nexus of things that were happening on Monday night was pretty special because you had the show floor and we were working the Faster Together suite, which was on the floor last year. Then there was the Apple presentation, which is always a big deal. We never know if they're going to schedule something, but they had a specific presentation that was at the NAB, at the regular convention center. So we all walked over and went to the FCP Works thing. Who was it? FCP Works, I think. Anyway, we went to that presentation, and that was an Apple official sponsored presentation. So you heard from then Steve Bays and the rest of the inner team members about what Apple was doing and saw some case studies, and that was open to everybody who had an NAB badge. Then we all went to the what used to be Ripple Training's event that night, and it was a smaller space, more adjacent. And we were a little packed in. It was a little harder to get around and talk to people, I found, because it was just kind of an atrium area, and it wasn't quite as expansive as when we were at the Hard Rock years before that. I don't really know all the details of what is going to be planned for a similar type of things this year. I know that I'm pretty sure that Ripple Training and FCP Works and all the other stakeholders involved, certainly LumaForge. And LumaForge has kind of taken they've really stepped up this year to take a lead in terms of helping the community come together. God bless them for that. And so I think there will be something, but whether those will be separate events, whether they will tie together and how they are going to figure out how to do that, we're leaving in their plans, their hands. Listen, it takes a lot of money. As anybody who's been going to NAB for years and kind of, wow, this is a nice party. And you talk to people and go, yeah, and it costs a fortune. Yeah. And, listen, this is part of what Las Vegas is all about. It is a huge convention city, and there are very tight organizations that distribute and organize the taking in and the paying out of vast amounts of money to get access to the type of qualified individual and buyer that comes to NAB. So, yeah, you get into these, I've sat down with Mike, and I don't know the specific details. I know I am no privy to his contracts, but I just know he said, oh, my God, do you have any idea how much it costs to just do coffee and pastries for,
Sure.
250 people, let alone 1,000 people that come to the super meet?
Sure.
And that's why it's always this balancing act. It's great that some of these bigger companies will cut these big checks to be able to be allowed on stage, because without that, you literally can't do it. I mean, no single person without that kind of financial backing has a hope
Absolutely.
of putting on a big deal at NAB. It's just really expensive.
So Eugene, Lauren, and Fox Mahoney both told me that my mic was muted, so I turned it back on.
You mean they've only had me to listen to?
No. I had it. I was doing something, so I muted my mic and put you on the screen. And I just, they said it's muted. I looked down. Of course it is. I have a physical mute, and I have software mutes.
My apologies to everybody for having this just with my rambling for that long.
No, that's exactly that's what you're here for. We're here to talk about stuff.
Well, I can certainly do that.
Oh, absolutely.
My wife will tell you I can do that to excess.
Well, that's, look, I'm turning it up. He said it's on, but it's a little low, so I will turn it up a little bit. There we go. Yeah, so I've had some interesting issues with trying to get audio to work through my primary audio interface over the last couple of days. But
look, they keep changing things on us. I hadn't been on Skype in probably 2 months, maybe 3 months.
Right.
When I logged back in, I had to go through triple authentication, and they pinged my phone and sent, two-factor authentication
they had to
three times.
Okay.
I had to go through 3 rounds of proving I was who I said I was in order to get back on Skype and get things going. And I think that's the new normal. I mean, I guess it's a double-edged sword. It's inconvenient, yes, but it also is the security that we all demand in this brand new world where we hear these stories about, oh, there's an exploit, and if you click on to go on FaceTime and you do this and that, then you can hear them without them knowing that you're listening to them, and nobody is going to accept that.
Right.
Right. These companies have to take personal security and privacy extremely seriously in this age.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
And there's an inconvenience penalty that we have to pay to make that happen. However you feel about it, that's just the way it's going to be.
So I asked you about the Guru Gathering. So I think I like the Hard Rock better, even though we had to drive there and we had to pay for parking, if I recall. I think last time, 2 years ago, Brad drove me and then I paid for the parking. But I liked it for a couple of reasons. Number one is you had some chairs.
Yes.
So
yes.
You're standing all day long at NAB. There's no place really to sit down very much. And if you stand all night, and then also the compactness of last year. Right. I like to be a little more spread out rather than everybody can. Because you figure you're walking around. I have equipment. I have a knapsack. I got food in one hand, drink in the other. I can't shake hands with anybody very effectively.
Yeah. Right. You're doing the balancing act, and it's tighter. The bodies are closer together, and it was harder to do that kind of thing. And sometimes that sort of thing is really important. Here's a little behind the scenes look. We've both been in an Apple presentation where they say, we would prefer it if you don't talk about these things. And then it was great to be able to sit down with a product manager at one of these one-on-one things and say, okay, then, you've told us something and you're saying please don't talk about it, and why? I mean, that seems like a conflict, and they would sometimes be a little honest and just say, look, some people on the web will come up and say crazy stuff and say, oh, Apple is getting out of the personal computer business entirely. And you're going, well, that's stupid.
Yeah.
And all we wanted to be able to do is to just let some people know, don't go out and blab about this stuff. But if somebody says something crazy, it would be great if somebody who understands this a little more can say, I'm pretty sure that is not going to happen. You can be confident that Apple is not getting out of the NLE business tomorrow.
Right, exactly.
And so it's this kind of little back channel kind of thing. And you just want some people out there who know a little bit about what's going on, even within the secrecy, so that you can quash those crazy rumors that keep coming up. And man, it's really hard to quash those. Some little nuts thing that I think nobody can possibly believe that, and yet it'll gain traction and it'll spread like wildfire on the internet. And unless there's some people out there who can at least say some things, even if it's, I don't know for sure and I can't tell you everything, but No, that's just dumb.
No, that's very true. So I just got into a discussion this morning on a logic board. Somebody came up and said, I've heard that Apple is going to stop supporting logic. And I said, sounds like BS to me.
And we live in this clickbait environment now where there can be a reward for saying the most outrageous thing possible.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, have you heard about the bug? And it's a bug in the scopes in Final Cut. And if you use Final Cut, you can't do professional work anymore because of this bug in the scopes. And, everybody blows up and there's thousands of posts and everybody screams and yells about it. And then a month and a half later, it turns out that, there was a little thing, but they kind of fixed it and it's no big deal. Now everybody goes on and plenty of professional work gets done using the scopes in Final Cut Pro 10. And we forget that huge tempest that came through the industry for
Do we forget it?
Well, yeah, that's the funny thing, it becomes part of the mindset. And those people who are predisposed not to learn about it, maybe all that sticks in their heads was scopes in 10 are crap. And in point of fact, they're not.
No, of course not.
But that's the little headline that sticks, and it's weird. It's just weird. It's hard to get to the bottom of things. It's really easy to pass around that kind of guff, and so I think there's some sense in having people. I try to, when I hear those kind of things, when I hear the rumors, Premiere Pro is horrible because of this thing, or Avid really can't do that. And I go, well, I don't know much about it, but I don't think there would be that many people using that software if it was really that horrible.
I agree with you, Bill.
Yeah. Is it really the whole, it's really not damaging the utility of the whole software. Is it an inconvenience for the people who need that function? Yeah. And should it be talked about? Oh, yeah. But it hardly ever brings these battleship programs to the ground and makes them unusable. But from the internet chattering forum classes, that's kind of what you get the feeling of. Oh my God, this is horrible. Well, not really. Sometimes just take a deep breath. Don't write 45 posts about it until you get some context and can find out. Is this a real stopper? If so, we will all know about it,
No, absolutely.
If everybody, every time you click here, your program crashes, we'll know about that.
Absolutely. So Eugene Lauren in the chat says, I always enjoy reading Bill on the Creative Cows Apple Final Cut Pro 10 debates forum.
Well, thank you. That's nice of you. It was a crazy thing that I got involved with that. I had been writing a magazine column for years, and it was just fun. And the thing I liked best about was when I would write something, and back in those days when I was writing in the magazine, it was 3 months between when I would write it when it would get published. And then a couple more months after that somebody would respond to something and challenge me or thank me or whatever, but they would feed back, and then I would talk back to them. And when I got into those early forums like the Creative Cow Forum, it was interesting because I could talk in real time. We'd have these debates and mix it up a little and have fun. And I truly didn't think anybody was reading it. I was just sometimes, it was arguing because I had some passions. And about Final Cut Pro 10 from the very beginning I did. But it was based entirely on the fact that once I went through my first couple of months, it started really working for me, and it was getting faster and faster, and it was more and more fun as I got my head around how it worked. And then I started noticing real measurable business impacts. Right. I was doing more work faster and making more money easier than I had before. So while all these people were out there screaming, oh, they've ruined the world, everything is horrible, I was going, that's kind of not what I'm finding here. Problem? Sure. But that's problems balanced against the fact that this thing is crazy, wicked fast, and it makes sense to how I think about editing.
Absolutely. So Tony Gallardo just got into the chat. He says, hey, guys, I saw you were on. Howdy.
Hey, Tony.
And, Tony, I got a question for you. I keep hearing conflicting reports about Resolve, the editing, the NLE and Resolve, and I'm just not ready to try it out because I keep hearing conflicting reports whether it's ready for prime time to do something, complete as far as the editing goes. Maybe you can chime in on that. Because that's one of the NLEs that I am interested in, is Resolve.
I think if you like tracks, if that resonates with you and you like those stripes and everything out that way, everybody says it's the fastest, most fully well, I don't know if they say it's the most fully featured, but it's the fastest. It's a fast, stable thing, and you get that amazing Resolve color correction in the back end tied into it.
Well,
so it can be a very powerful program.
That is the Trojan horse. The same way that Steve Jobs did the iPad, iPod, and iTunes on Windows. Mm-hmm. When he first did that, people said, "Are you crazy?" And he goes, "No, I got an idea." And it was a Trojan horse to get into people, let them see how Mac operated versus Windows. And I think Resolve is doing the exact same thing. I think because of their color correction is in so many, even high-end studios in Hollywood already, at some point somebody's going to say, "Hey, wait a minute, we got this free NLE. Let's try this out on a project."
I agree with you 100%, and I think Resolve, that team has done amazing work in really taking something that didn't have any editing tools to speak of and grafting a brand new, highly polished NLE environment and putting it in there. The only thing for me, and this is just about me and how I think about editing now, I don't want to go back to tracks.
Right.
And it's a funny thing. I adore the trackless magnetic environment. It works the way I think. I think the way it works now.
Right.
And it's so much simpler for me to think about audio as embedded or not embedded rather than as horizontal stripes that live in one place.
Right. Here's the only thing I would say about that. When I do these live videos, and I get the video, I download the video after they're over, and sometimes I'll put together a little promo the next day. The audio and video are out of sync. Always. Well,
it can be, and there's always going to be that issue. You've got sample rate things to deal with.
But my point is, I have to detach the audio, and I prefer if I could just tweak them. And still stay in the same container, just tweak a couple of frames, one way or the other, but still stay together like the way 10 does, right?
Right.
And that's what I'd like to do, just without detaching, because once you detach, you can't go back.
It's a thing that 10 editors had to learn, because we were all used to all your video tracks are up here and all your audio tracks are down there, and that's the way it is, and you can tell when they're in sync and when they're and getting into the clip as a modular unit of audio and video that is one element, and how to think about that is a transition that 10 editors had to make. We all had to make it. And we all had to be able to glance at a timeline and go, there's not a single. I had this thing that I did, and at the end of it, because it was an embedded music video piece, and the video and audio came in together, and we were just working with the song. I had all this video. I didn't have any audio showing on the timeline at all.
Right.
So I had a whole project, and there was not an audio track anywhere in sight. And I remember one of my friends came over and said, This is MOS. This is no sound. No. The whole track is embedded under the video clip, and it's going to stay in sync the whole time. And all the rest of this are connected clips, and that was back in the days when you could connect clips above and below your timeline.
Right.
And I had all this complicated video stuff going on, and they couldn't understand how I could work with audio without seeing a single audio track. And, but you got to figure out how that works. It's a different way to think.
So Tony says, Resolve is a powerhouse of a suite if you buy into its ecosystem. And that's, the thing is, I just want to start with the NLE and try it out. But I keep hearing conflicting reports of how stable it is, even at version 15, whatever it is. Now, I suppose they're going to have 15.5 or even 16 at NAB, because Blackmagic always has big things happening there. They have a big suite.
Sure.
So I expect either 16 or 15.5, a major upgrade to it.
Yeah.
But the thing about, remember Final Cut Pro 10, at one point you could bring video tracks below?
That's what I'm talking about. Those early days,
right? You can't bring the video tracks down anymore.
No, it was one of the major revisions when they introduced all the roles and lanes and all the rest of that. They rethought audio. We had kind of been hoping for a long time that they would. We knew that audio had been kind of in the background for a long time, And then we first saw with rolls, like, wait a second, this is something entirely new. I got to get my head around this. And then lanes on top of rolls, and everybody had to rethink how this works. But it seemed to me they were reacting to something. And here's a personal thing. Starting a few years back when I started working with the Faster Together crew, and even before that, with FCP Works, we were working with these new recorders, these new like the Blackmagic stuff, and it was much more a video over IP orientation than it was a classic video in tracks orientation.
Okay.
And I was having to start rethinking all the stuff I had been thinking about for decades on the production side, because I didn't have an XLR audio feed anymore. I had a Cat5 thing that I was plugging in.
Right.
And it was going to carry video and audio and a bunch of other stuff multiplex. It might carry 10 or 16 audio tracks and a video mix and a bunch of other stuff.
Sure.
And I thought, okay, my plumbing sense that grew up through all these years of working with professional video has to change. And video over IP is probably going to eventually be the single standard because it's just too powerful.
Right. So Eugene says the magnetic timeline in rolls is greater than tracks.
It can be, but it also, listen, I totally agree with you, but it can be, but that also puts a little onus on you, because you have to do that mind retraining. You have to not just say, when I throw my clip on a timeline, my video, I look here for my video and I look there for my audio and I see it's 2 tracks and it's probably stereo and I'm comfortable with that. Well, now you throw a clip on the timeline, and you have to be able to understand what's embedded in that clip. Is it 1 video and 2 audio channels? Is it 1 video and 8 audio channels?
Right.
And so all of those back-end things in 10 that lets you expand and detach audio, those were kind of new concepts because of the nature of the files we were starting to work with, that really, for me, 10 changed everything in thinking about that. And, man, I would get out of NAB with the clips from the recordings, and I would have, here's the master recording, here's a whole bunch of ISO camera shots, and each of those ISO camera shots could have 16 tracks of audio in them.
Right.
So
but
you get
they were empty,
4
though,
cameras.
Right? Some of them were empty.
Yeah, a lot of them were empty, but I still had to learn to deal with it. In fact, in the first few NAB shows we did, the fact that you had a ton of empty tracks was a problem. It was really delaying our processing of audio. They fixed almost all of that now, but in those early days, you would start just processing audio waveforms, and it seemed like 10 was looking at every one of the 16 tracks from every one of the 4 cameras. And that was an hour-long take, and it was taking forever to process that.
Right.
It doesn't do that anymore. That's all kind of been solved, but you're just, again, I keep thinking of it as I'm working in a new environment. This isn't like the video and audio processing I learned early in my career. I have to change.
So Tony says you can still put video below magnetic, just can't move audio above the magnetic, is what he says.
Yeah, he's correct. You can, if you have your primary storyline, you can put more video below the primary, but the audio is going to stay below that. And at one time, back in the early days of Final Cut Pro 10, it was kind of fun because you could grab an audio clip for like a sound effect. Right. And if you had a car door closing up on track 20, you could put the audio for the car door closing right below that on the video tracks. And that was kind of cool for a while, but then we lost that and we got other things in its stead.
Right. So Dave Mathis says, still waiting for a rolls-based mixer and keyframing. Well, speaking of that, wait a minute. Speaking of that, so
go for it.
Typically, okay, we've seen the Final Cut Pro team. They've done it now. They've done their presentation at the Creative Summit last year. They did one at LA CPUG in January.
Yes.
I know they watch. I don't expect them to do the same one at NAB.
I would think not. A lot of people were thinking 10.5 at the Creative Summit. A lot of people are now thinking maybe 10.5. And if, and I have no knowledge.
Right. I don't either.
If we get a bump at NAB, the question is, what potential feature changes or big enough things to justify a full dot upgrade will there be? Whenever I hear roles-based mixer, it causes me to grin. Like with everybody else. Would that be cool? Utterly. It would be awesome, and I'd love to see what they could do in that area. But people have been asking that for maybe 5.5, 6 years.
Right, but remember, we didn't get remove attributes for like 5 or 6 years either.
I totally get that, but I also think that part of me thinks, okay, we are taking what we know, which is, the Mackie mixers or the Soundcraft boards that we grew up with.
Right.
And we are projecting that onto our new way of working and thinking, give me something like I'm comfortable with. And I think that's legit. I believe in that. But I also know that every time Final Cut Pro 10 has really wowed me, it's because the designers have thought beyond what my limited, this is what I used to have, so give me more of that.
Sure. No, that part I 100% agree with. But I mean, they can still do some things with audio they haven't done yet, whether it's a mixer, whatever. The thing that I don't particularly like is applying an effect to an entire roll. You still have to go in and out of a compound clip, right?
Right.
I'd rather just have some kind of whatever they want to call it, a master lane, perhaps, and just put it on there, and I don't have to go. Going in and out of compound clips seems a little clunky to me. So I wish they'd smooth that out.
You've got these terms. You've got rolls. You've got buses. You've got submixes. You've got side chains. These things are well known in the audio world. And so everybody who comes into Final Cut, or any NLE for that matter, with an audio background, I know how to use a side chain. Wouldn't that be cool if I had a side chain in this?
Sure.
And we all say, yes, of course, that would be great. But is that the optimum way now that you have a chance to do things differently? Steve Martin, I remember, did a presentation, I think a few years ago, and it was just a kind of a drop-off thing, but he said, you can look at the way after rolls came out, you can look at that in the context of you almost have a micro mixer on the clip. And then he went on and talked about other stuff, and it stuck in my head, and I was going, wait a second, hold on. That is something that I had not conceptually even thought about. Right. And so...
No, I know what you're saying. The innovation that they bring forward, I still expect that. Absolutely, I still expect that. But I think, I don't think anybody thinks that they're done with audio.
I just wonder how much, what is happening behind the scenes. It would be interesting to, when whatever audio thing changes, if audio ever changes, because none of us know, will there be aspects of it that are truly surprising? Because that's part of the legacy of Final Cut Pro 10, is from the very beginnings with magnetic clip behavior, we got things that were truly surprising. Rolls was truly surprising. There have been other things along the development of this tool that have been, wow, I never had something like that before. And almost in all cases, it truly drove productivity.
Absolutely.
We all know now that if you are disciplined enough to set rolls pretty religiously at the beginning before you import, the fact that the metadata for all your rolls sequences through every use of that in projects, in groupings, and the metadata flows all the way out to your masters, it's very powerful. It can be very powerful if you learn to manage that flow of metadata going through the whole suite. And so, most people in Final Cut Pro 10, as they start to get into rolls, they're still, my rolls on my storyline don't have, there's no rolls. I got to assign them here. And you're going, you really should have done that.
Exactly.
Back over there.
Exactly.
When things first came in, because then you wouldn't have to mess with anything as you do your work in the timeline. You keep your head on making the timeline work the best it can, and not pull out to go back and fix roll stuff that could have been done originally.
No, that's true. But that's always the discipline of pre-production.
Amen.
Production. It's always been there. Whether you're scheduling things, whether you're when you're logging stuff, doing all that stuff, and when you're in pre-production or even production, it's going to be much better for you as you actually get into editing.
Yeah, it's the nature of metadata. I think Greg and Phil and Greg were talking to me back in one of those very early NABs when they were starting to just first get into being the metadata, gurus they are now. That this stuff is transformative.
Yes.
It has a potential to transform the entire production process from the first time you trigger a camera in the shoot to the to 5 years from now when your video is sitting on YouTube and somebody downloads it, it can affect all of that. Right. So learning to manage that, the overt in front of you metadata, the way your NLE works with metadata, but also the embedded metadata that came from the beginning and flows all the way down. It's important. And it's really hard because we're just thinking, I just want to make this cut right. I want to sequence these things better. It's a little unwieldy here. Can I make this smooth and flow and keep my audience engaged? And yet you still have to have your kind of at least a piece of your mind.
No, absolutely.
This way upstream and way downstream stuff now. This business isn't getting easier.
I want to pick two people for what happens at NAB. I want to pick one person to congratulate if things go smoothly and one person to chastise if things go horribly wrong. What do you think? We have nominees. We have Michael Horton. We have Sam Messman. We have Patrick Southern. Those are the first three I would choose for one of those awards.
Let me tell you something. I know who would raise their hand first. Sam would raise his hand first. Sam would raise his, even if he absolutely does not have the power to make it. He's one of those great guys, and I really do love Sam, because he's one of those great guys who said, I'm going to try it. I'm going to say yes. And if it blows up, I'm fine with it blew up because of me. And if it goes great, this is the magic of guys like Sam. If it goes great, it's because of them. You can tell I'm a big Sam fan. I've known him for many years now. And it's that spirit of let's try to do something fun. Let's take chances. And if it blows up, it's okay. If it blows up, I'll raise my hand as the guy who blew it up. Even though, to me, I spend a lot of time in the corporate world. It's the kind of leadership you die for in your operation. Right? Somebody who is quick to take responsibility, but is also quick to share credit. I love those guys, and I will work with them forever if I can. So
Lutz in the chat says, if Resolve would get something like the magnetic timeline, I would certainly consider it. So the interesting thing is, every time I look at Resolve, it looks like a cross between Final Cut Pro 7 and Final Cut Pro 10. Yeah. Like, for example, from 7, it has the ability to drag from the left viewer to the right viewer and get that overlay to do all your edits. That's directly from 7.
Right.
And it has other things that look like Final Cut Pro 10. So to be honest, it would not surprise me if somehow they sneak in a magnetic timeline at some point. Would it surprise you?
No, it wouldn't. But the question is this: is overlaying a feature out of the magnetic timeline the same as doing what Apple, I think, had the guts to do, which is tear it all down in 2011 and completely restart? Is it great that Premiere Pro editors have hover scrub? Yes. It is fabulous, and I've watched on the forums as people say, this is really helping me get my work done faster. And, it's not that different than the skimmer, which was out 4 or 5 years before it. And I'm not even sure that this is the very first time a skimmer-like thing has ever been done. Maybe that's not even Apple's thing. But Final Cut Pro 10 made it popular with editors who use that software, because the first day we saw the skimmer, we all went, "Oh my God, this is so much better for reviewing."
Some people didn't like it. How do I turn this off?
How do I turn it off?
Yeah. It's always driving me crazy. It's very easy to turn off. The thing, once you get used to it, that's one of the main things I like about 10. And I wish Logic would get that. I wish Logic would get, just turn it off with one single keystroke. But the thing about the Premiere version, the hover scrub, it doesn't work in the timeline, from what I understand. It only works in the browser. I think that's correct, what I've been told.
But they're trying to give their users something that was proven to be a advance. This is better for an editor. Right. It is just simply better if you can drag your mouse through a big long clip and identify as you're going, closer to where you want to get.
Right.
And I don't care whose branding is on the software that lets their users do that. It's a good thing to let your users do that.
Absolutely.
And so good for them. You know, there are aspects of editing that I'm sure the designers at Apple have seen, okay, they did that kind of right. Let's see if we can do something similar to that too. That's good for the industry. And
Absolutely.
I'm a big believer in that. Even if they don't always get it right. But, you know, I got to say this. It's just so funny you brought it up because it is so true that I go back and I think of the hundreds of conversations I had with people who started out going, how can I turn off magnetism? This is the very first thing they wanted to know. You know, I can't use this. These clips are all jumping around. How can I turn that off? And you know, you're going, oh God, don't tell. Nobody say position mode.
Right.
Because what you're going to do is you're going to shortcut them learning how the software actually works.
There's many paths people take to learning software. As an instructor, I know that. I'm sure you know that as well.
Yeah, totally.
So sometimes it's like Swiss cheese, and there's these holes all over the place, and it doesn't get solid until they do some more concentrated learning on it.
Right.
But you know, I use the position tool once in a while, sometimes, but not that often. I mean, if I'm dragging something in the timeline and I want to leave a gap, obviously I'll use it.
Right.
But you know, but the thing is, they did put it in there from the very beginning. Apple did put it there.
It's got its place. You know, that function, the function to absolutely move a single clip or element in time without affecting anything else around it, is an important function.
Absolutely.
They knew that. But, you know, my old timeline used to all work in that fashion. So let me be comfortable by putting the whole thing in position mode all the time and build my edits that way. If an editor early did that, they were just cheating themselves because they'd never got to understand the magnetic relationships that were a core of how to work efficiently in 10. You know, learning to build vertically as opposed to just learning to organize horizontally is a huge development the Final Cut Pro 10 editor has to go through.
Right.
You know, I can work on this piece of the middle, and eventually when I build out the two ends around it, I can just take that and slop it over here or move it over there or switch it with three things.
Sure.
There's no penalty so that I don't have to go back to, let me work on the first amount of my timeline, the second and third. We've always been able to do that with all NLEs, but you have to cut and paste these large complex things. We had to cut and paste them for a long time, you know. Big selection rank thing around this really confusing thing. Right. Cut it out, go over here, paste it, and then fix everything.
Well, even when I taught Final Cut Pro 7 certified classes, they encourage people to not checkerboard, to get as much stuff down into a single timeline as you could, because checkerboarding is, you know, it's a traditional way of doing things, especially coming from the film world. But
and
even
audio.
in 7, even in 7,
audio where crossfades, it's huge.
Yes, exactly. So Tuesday night is called Faster Together Stage, right?
Right.
It's going to be different than Faster Together from 2018 and 2017. Each one of those were different from the one before. This one now, once again, and it's not the Super Meet. It's not the Super Meet.
No. Okay. And the behind the scenes reason for all this stuff it's really not interesting. I mean, it's just things evolve over the course of time. Supermit's been going for 15 plus years, right? Or very close to that. So it had a way it did things. And that came from the fact that what Mike could do, the relationships he had, the rooms he could work in, what he could get done. I mean, Mike never had a big budget for let's come in and build a set, for example, or anything like that. So they just didn't think in those ways. And I'm not saying that's what's coming. I'm just saying that you're constrained by the deals you can make in the room and how you can do it. So the Super Meet has always been an increasingly sized room full of chairs, usually with a front of the house projection team back there, backstage. And most people never got backstage. And I spent my whole Super Meet career mostly backstage.
Sure.
It's a big operation back there. People would be surprised at how complex putting on a show, even like the Super Meet is. Not a review where there's acts changing all the time, but just the presentation of one thing, a little bit of interstitial fill, a presentation of another thing. You've got a big operation backstage to make that go smoothly.
Absolutely.
they have a chance to rethink some of that, and I hope that they will. I know some of the things they're trying to do, but, this will be the first year. I will say this, though, overall, and this kind of, I hope, excites people. All of us who did the Super Meet for all those years came out of a type of production, an era of production, and we looked at production one way. Right now, our industry is getting an influx of new young people who don't see it the same way that we used to see it.
Right.
They have different tools. They have different types of things. They definitely have different outlets, right?
Yep.
A clip going up on YouTube has a different set of requirements than a clip being broadcast on an NBC affiliate. And NAB was all about that NBC affiliate type of industry because that was the television industry in its beginning, middle, and evolving stages. But now things are digitized, and now these new young people have a different orientation. So my fervent wish for this is that guys like the folks at LumaForge and others who are hip to the new stuff, but appreciative of the old stuff as well, find a way to transition what happens at NAB, at least now, and who knows whether it'll go farther than NAB someday, but to transition it into something that maintains its relevance for the traditional group, but finds its footing for the new groups, the kids that are coming up. And I can only say kids because I'm old, but you can be a kid at 40 if you have the right attitude.
Absolutely.
And I want to see that transition start to happen, and I think these guys get that. I truly do. So I am really hoping that the young, exciting people who want to do NAB like those of us older guys for this generation come out and support what Sam and the guys at LumaForge are trying to do with the Super Meet this year. If you do, you're in on the beginning stages like I was in the beginning of the original meetings at NAB. And even if it's things that go beyond NAB, maybe even if there are some virtualized portions of it, if you get involved and go watch, go help support, just show up. This could be the next generation's big coalescing around what the video arts as a come-together moment can be.
Absolutely.
And if I was out there just watching this from afar, I would be very excited about this because, it's a transition. It's a disruption. And disruption for a lot of people who are very smart means opportunity.
So
Dave
Mathis in the Final Cut Pro 10 user group says, watching right now, I love hearing what Bill Davis has to say. Isn't that a nice comment? So
yeah, listen, all I'm saying is everybody that I know in video who've come through this stuff for all these years is what we believe. I mean, this stuff, what we do is make stuff for an audience. That's the point. Serve the audience. Give the audience good ideas. Give the audience something that'll engage them, hopefully that'll help them. And then all the people who make this stuff in this diffuse world of, we used to have to go to NAB and get Chrome Coat brochures to understand what the new Sony deck did, to be able to read the specs.
Sure.
You couldn't find that anyplace else. You can find it anywhere now. The 2 minutes after it's released, you'll find it online. So the stuff, the specs, that stuff doesn't matter as much. What still matters are the people.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's the older tribe management is going away. Some of the new tribe is coming in. It's a great opportunity for many, many people to come in, shake some hands, meet some people, and make a mark in where this industry is going. And I don't know how many more years we will have these big things.
Exactly. So one of the things I want to say, anybody that wants to go to the Faster Together stage at NAB Tuesday, April 9th at the Rio Hotel, discount code.
Excellent.
Jellyfish 2019, all one word. Let me see if I have that up here. I'll put it up right now. Save $5. I mean, you can't beat it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't matter the NLE you use. It doesn't matter the camera you shoot with. You can shoot on your iPhone and edit with Vegas. It doesn't matter. You're going to find other people who are interested in the same things you are. And, you may not huddle with the people who are using software A or software B or software C,
Sure.
or you might huddle with just find a group of 5 guys who work with whatever it is that you work with, the kind of video you do. I mean, I remember walking up to a conversation and it was 3 guys who were really passionate about underwater video making. And I had no interest in underwater video making, but it was fascinating listening to them compare the way cameras reacted and the way their software reacted to
Absolutely.
that specialized thing. And they were in heaven because you can do a little bit of it online, but there's nothing like sharing a drink a little tipsy.
No, it is.
And telling war stories about, how hard it was to do that.
So when I had Sam and Patrick on last week, I think it was, when they announced this, and I asked them if they're going to have a similar kind of lobby, like, with vendors and all, and they said yes, they're planning on doing exactly that again. So they're going to, but it's going to be a curated list of vendors. It's not going to be a free for all, but that doesn't mean it means it's going to be better.
One hopes so. It's a funny thing. I remember there were some middle years in there where some of the presentations on the Super Meet stage, I mean, I used to get excited about most of them. And then there was a period where I got excited about some of them. And then there was a period in there where, frankly, I got excited about fewer of them. The thing itself was getting bigger and bigger. It was more and more costly. Mike had to find out, okay, what major company has the ability to reach into their coffers and come help support this, because it's very expensive to put these things on.
Absolutely.
And so, you do get, in the past, you got those. I know they want to curate this, and I think Sam's a real good guy, and the whole team at LumaForge, they're really good folks to try to understand, they're not just looking at who's got the money. They're looking at who's cool and has the money, so that you're not sitting through a presentation that's consuming a big chunk of the evening from something that you would never consider in a million years. It's like, even if the guys who do the Tyler mounts for Bell Jet Ranger helicopters with big cameras have a lot of budget and want to sponsor something, that's probably not where the industry is going.
No,
and and nothing wrong with those. They great products. For years, that's everything you saw in the news came out of those things. But that's not the kind of the way it's done now. Somebody's going to send up a drone now.
Right.
And so, I think what they're going to try to do, and this is more speculation on my part, is try to put together presentations that they would want to come and enjoy.
No, absolutely.
And if they do that, it's going to be really fun.
So one of the things that when I talked to Sam last week, he said they're not planning on. I think because I really missed the workflow suite from last year.
Yeah.
And the reason is, first reason is M&Ms. Okay?
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
M&Ms are at every table. Big bowl of M&Ms. So that's the first reason. The second reason was we had a place to sit down and congregate, because NAB, that doesn't exist. Everything is standing and walking and going, and you can see a couple of chairs, a couple of places, and that's where I typically go. But no communal place where we know, hey, this room is going to be people that I know. It's going to be Phil Hodgetts. It's going to be yourself. Michael Cioni's going to drop in. Steve Martin's going to drop in. Michael Kamas is going to drop in. And
and some of the new people, Michael Morrison and iJustine, and maybe those Apple things that are involving the new things, maybe they can get them there. I don't know that that's true, and I don't know that, it may not be possible to do some of those what I consider marquee names of the new things, the Marquise Brownlees, who we've seen, uses Final Cut and loves Final Cut. Whether or not those people will be there, I can't tell you, but I can tell you they're interested in bridging this gap between the old production world and the production world that should be coming towards us.
Right.
And if they can pull that off, if they can get these two different generational camps together to mix it up, I think that would be just so sublimely wonderful, because the people who have been doing it for decades know a lot about how things, the pitfalls. The new people know enough to ignore some of the things that they're concerned with and focus on the things that the new people are concerned with. But a place where everybody can talk to each other, that's just worth worth diamonds.
It absolutely is. That's the one thing that I'm going to miss more than anything, if nothing like that happens this time. Because Monday, I'm going to get there Sunday, but Monday, where am I going to go specifically? Besides, if there is an Apple event in the evening, and if, I presume there's going to be the Guru Gathering, but during the day, it's going to be like, it's a free-for-all if there's no place to congregate. It's just everybody just goes everywhere.
As we get closer, I think this will become really clear. I don't think it's clear now because the question is, Apple was not on the show floor and didn't do anything official. Then for a couple of years, they did things a bit officially. They had the room next to, and in the evening on one of the nights, you would come and the Final Cut Pro team would make an official presentation in the evening at NAB.
Right.
And so how that's going to morph into what it's going to be this year, listen, there's never been a year that I haven't spotted in the last 15 years, even the last 10 years, after Apple stopped doing the booth on the show floor. There's never been a year that I haven't seen a few people from Apple that I know wandering NAB. So they always keep an eye on it.
Sure.
That's just how it works. I'm sure they're going to be invested. I'm sure they're going to be involved. And it wouldn't surprise me to see them doing something. What branding is on top of them doing something? That's for the contractual people to work out.
Exactly.
Where does, they don't generally pay to do a booth anymore.
No, I don't expect that. No, absolutely not.
Right.
But here, without nobody has told me anything yet,
right.
Okay, I'm going to place a bet that Michael Cioni is going to be there. I'm just going to say that's the one person I'm probably about 90% sure. He's been at the last two, and he has one of the highlight presentations. So I'm just going to say I presume Michael Cioni is going to be there.
I'd have to really carefully look at the spread before I take that bet against you, because I think there's he's a really brilliant thinker. I was on stage with him, and thank God it was really fun at the last LA meeting, and he really thinks differently than most of the people do this. He has a much more strategic, big view.
Yep.
And in all of the presentations at NAB that I have sat and watched him talk, I've always come away with something fascinating that I didn't know about before, and it's helped me get my head around where the industry might be going.
And last time at Facts Are Together, he talked about 8K.
Right.
And he is very entertaining.
Absolutely.
Not just,
Yeah. Well, the thing that's online now that I think LumaForge put up, that Michael Morrison talking to Patrick Southern, I mean, that was a great conversation. I had the same little bits of feeling. He was talking about how a facility that used to be the province of TV stations, how they put that together for their YouTube operations. And what are the similarities? What are the differences? What are the problems? How does it work? And, when I was growing up into the business, a civilian without CBS or NBC pockets, or at least capital of a huge amount, could not become the TV station alternative vendor for high-level production without a huge investment. Now you've got these young people who are starting out with, crazy makeup videos, and then suddenly they find themselves with 3 million, 6 million, 10 million viewers.
That is absolutely amazing.
Building studios.
It's amazing.
They're building operations to become the next generation's content houses.
Yes.
That is a huge morph of opportunity for people. And if you're there, you can talk. If you're at NAB and if you come to events like this, you can actually get a few minutes with those people and bounce some ideas off of them. And it's astonishing.
No, it absolutely is astonishing.
Yeah.
So that's my prediction. It's not a very original.
I think it's a good one though, Richard.
Yeah, I think so.
And listen, they're working as hard as they can. I know that. I talk to Sam every once in a while, every few days, and it's been like he's like in it. They're all in it. Patrick's in it. The PR woman is in it. Everybody's in it, trying to figure out. But this is the thing I love. They're all trying to figure out how do we do it as right as we can.
Yes.
We're not going to get everything right. We're going to have glitches and whatever. It's the first time. But they really want it to be a great event. They want it to be a great event for the community. And I can tell you one thing. I don't think, based on the guys who were asking people to come and speak and the women who are involved in getting people onto the stage, I don't think they're going to be happy unless they have really great people there. And I'm really looking forward to seeing who they come up with.
Oh, I have no doubt about that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're going to get there on, you said Saturday this year?
Well, I have in the past. I'm only officially committed to doing stuff on Monday and Tuesday night this year. I will be around most of these big events. So I'm recalibrating whether I want to do what I did before. I'm not going this year as a reporter the same way I have in the past.
Right.
So I'm not trying to cover and file stories on the things I see Sunday and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I did that for many years. So now I'm going mostly to help this transition into whatever the new social evening NAB thing is, because I honestly, I just care about it. This is what has really accelerated my career. I mean, the people that I know that I really adore being connected with because they're smarter, on top of things, they understand how things work way better than I do. Those come from my relationships mostly built from NAB through all those years. And it's time for the new generation to start making those same connections, meeting those same people, and becoming the people who in 10 or 15 years, whatever the global distribution of information from our industry becomes, this is the ground floor for people. This could be a huge ground floor for people who come to see things that LumaForge is putting on this year.
I agree. I mean, if I was a youngster and I was just getting started in my career, these kind of places, I would have died to have these kind of places when I was younger. To meet people, to shake hands, to pass your information out. Hey, if you need somebody, I'm willing to, do whatever. That would have been fantastic. I mean, I didn't have any exposure to anything video or film related when I was younger. Only to recording studios and music, yes, but not to film and video. So that didn't happen, and that came because of recording studios. I started recording my bands in the studio.
You got into the place where other people who shared your passions were hanging out.
Right.
And that's what accelerates your career more than anything else. That's exactly what happened. I made the stupidest, dumbest thing. The first probably 5 years I went to NAB, I didn't get much out of it because I thought it was about seeing things. And I was dumb. And I finally, after a few years, started to realize it's not about seeing things. It's about meeting people. It's about that first drink I had 14 years ago outside of something at NAB where I got to sit for 20 minutes and talk to Phil Hodgetts.
Right.
And we made a little bit of a connection. And then the next year, a little bit more. And suddenly that's Phil from NAB. And then suddenly Phil's doing, really interesting work in understanding how metadata is changing the industry. And, he's a player in this, talking to a lot of people and getting wisdom, and he's willing to share it with me. So I have a little more wisdom about what metadata means. And then when metadata changes and I can touch it like I could with Final Cut Pro 10, I was more ready. I was more ready than I would have been if I hadn't had those conversations at NAB. And so that's how it works. That's how you get better. It's how you improve your career, because you improve yourself by talking to people who know more than you do.
So one of the, we see common requests for big ticket items for a new version of Final Cut. I mean, Apple has already pre-announced there's going to be an update to Final Cut Pro the first half of 2019 that's going to do the legacy media mumbo jumbo, identify, convert. They've already pre-announced that. Okay.
Yeah.
Some people are surprised that when I tell them that. I said, no, Apple official has pre-announced that. I always say, well, is that going to continue working in the operating system when it comes out in the fall? Because that seems to be the problem where it starts. But other people, the ticket items that I keep seeing are, of course, collaboration. And the other one is a better proxy workflow, which I think is probably easier than collaboration. So I don't think that that's going to be... because right now you can convert, you have the option when you do optimized media of a couple different levels.
Yeah.
And like I say all the time, I shoot 4K. Okay, I shoot 10-bit 4K. A 2K proxy is not very much of a proxy, right? That's twice as much as a 1080p.
Yeah.
And it's out like a 720 even. So I'd like to get some adjustments in the proxy, just a couple. Data rate and frame size would be nice if they did that.
So here's my 2 cents worth on that, and all these things like this should be simple for Apple to fix. Right? I see that in threads all the time. And a couple of times when I've been sitting quietly with somebody who should know about how this stuff works, sometimes the thing is, well, it's kind of that easy and it's kind of not that easy. And there are a lot of moving parts in here. And, for people who say proxies should work like they used to work when I started using them in Final Cut Pro 7, it doesn't work the same way. The files in a capture scratch and the footage pool that is extrapolated into ranges held in a database, those aren't the same things. And, a single line to a capture scratch location and a database that has little tiny ranges that it has to depend on, right? Because you want to apply this color correction to this range. So that range has to be the same time every time the database goes to look at it. You can't fool around with it. You can't change its if you say if the database thinks the range starts here and it ends here at these numbers, and somebody does something, concatenates something or changes the sampling rate or does something, and that end of the range is no longer there, the database is going to go, you're telling me to go from here? I'm lost. There is no here. Right. This doesn't exist anymore. So it's not the same. And I always think, if there really was a simple way for these guys, because these guys are, they're not perfect and they make mistakes, but they really know what they're doing about this stuff. If there was a real simple way to just say, hey, let's fix proxies. Let's take the weekend and work through the weekend and we'll fix proxies. Then we can shut all those guys up.
Like anybody, they have their priorities and they have to schedule things. But Lutz says he reduces his proxies more with compressor. It takes a bit more time, but it's worth the drive space. But how do you make them link up to Final Cut Pro when you switch from proxy to original media? That's the issue. It's not actually reducing them.
Part of it is you use this word, and we all think we know what it means, which is link up. We think we know that means, right? I was linking up to my capture scratch stuff earlier through my whole career. Sure. Now I want to link up to the same thing in the same way. But, something has changed under the hood, and it's no longer a thing sitting in a capture scratch that's a discrete clip the way it was once before.
Right.
It's got similar things, but there are also things that are different. So I want it to work. I want all the things that I loved about the way it used to work to be carried on forward as well. And I'm disappointed constantly, right?
Yes.
There were things, in Final Cut Pro version 1.0.
The project library.
I want the project library. I love that thing. I was doing great things with the project library, and they took it away from me. And you just have to go, and a lot of these things that people want from the way they edited in another program to come, I get the frustration. I had easy proxy relinking. I want it back.
Right.
It's emotional. I want it back. I don't want to think about this anymore. It doesn't work the way I want it to. I'm frustrated. I get that. Right. But it just doesn't necessarily work that way anymore.
Well,
and you lose that, but you get all this range-based tagging suddenly.
Of course.
And nobody's going to give that up because that's like genius.
It is. The interesting thing about the proxy library that used to exist, not the project library, in the browser, okay, you can scrub a compound clip, you can scrub a multicam clip, and when you go to share, you can also scrub the project there. But for some reason, you cannot scrub a project in the browser yet. It seems weird that you can't,
It does seem weird, but you use the word some reason. There must be some reason. And I just think, why can't they just fix, 50% of your list in a couple of weeks and just move on? Everybody knows it needs these things. Everybody would like a better proxy workflow. Everybody would love better keyframing. Everybody, there's all these things that we all go, yeah, I want that. The keyframes are too fiddly. But that's not where their head is at right now. Right. And you know something? If you've been around Final Cut Pro 10 a long time, even though you're not thrilled with the keyframing, I keyframe stuff all the time. and I figured out how it wants me to keyframe, and I can get all my keyframe stuff done. Not optimal, and certainly not if you've been using After Effects and you're used to, I want keyframing like that. No, you're not going to get that because this isn't the same program that is.
Right.
You can make it function. You can make it and so my only advice is always, you can sit there and be dissatisfied because the glass is half empty and you don't have keyframing the way you would like it to be. Or you can look at it and say, you know something, keyframing is at 50% of what I would want, and I can work in that 50% and get my work done and move on with the hope that someday keyframing, however Apple chooses to change it, if they choose to change it, becomes a bigger deal.
Absolutely. So Edward Bruce Radcliffe says roll, bass, mixture, better keyframes, etc. And he says, although Add Motion is amazing.
Yeah,
I use Add Motion too. I have that.
And that's the story of Final Cut Pro 10, right? You get these surprises that you didn't think you would ever want that just are transformatively wonderful. And there are areas that you think, oh God, if this just was better, I could stop having to think about how to do keyframes anymore. It would be glorious. The glorious new Final Cut Pro 10 keyframe, whatever it is,
right.
Editor, menu.
Right.
You know, I love it. It's fine. Okay, now what happens? You check that one off your list and you go to the next 10 things on your list, which
Absolutely.
are still there.
And it'll never, we're never not going to have a list.
Right.
What fun would that be?
No.
They wouldn't have any work. They wouldn't have any work to do. The team would have to retire.
Yeah, and if there's nothing on the list, change stops. And change is what's exciting about the world. I didn't have, this until I had it, and then, the workflow extensions. Oh my God, talk about blow up in your head.
They are huge. Absolutely.
I was in the middle of a project for a corporate client that had probably 50 Shutterstock clips in it. And I went, wait a second, there's a workflow extension for Shutterstock? And just like getting into 10 at first, I misused them. I couldn't figure out how to link things. I had to scrape around a little bit. But when I finally got them for the next project, it took hours and hours of time out of, it's approved? Great. Let me click a few things, and now all of them are substituted. All of my stock photos and all of the moves are intact and everything's cool. And hey, all right, I just saved 5 hours in a day of substituting all my iStock photos or the Shutterstock photos for the finals. And my life is better. I can now go have a drink. Absolutely. So, it's really hard. I understand this, but I used to argue with people a lot on Creative Commons and other things about this. I know. Which Bill Davis is argue? Well, but the thing was, I heard this all the time. Why can't this one work like what I used to work with? And every time I heard that, I just flipped it in my mind saying, so what you're saying is you don't want your software to change. You don't want it to advance. You want it to continue to work like it worked before. But there's some acceptable new things that you want, but you don't want them to touch any of the things that for you are unacceptable. We want perfect software. It has to be perfect for me, not you, Mr. Event Editor, or not you, Mr. Documentarian, or not you, Ms. Art Video Editor, or not you, Ms. I'm working with a high-level government official, and I need my software to take care of the things that they need, the security and all the rest of it. Not any of you guys, but just the stuff that I want. Right. Well, are you mean to tell me that editors are like that? They only want stuff that they want? No. One of the things that kills me now is I watch some of these documentarians struggling with other things, and I just keep thinking, God, of all the kinds of programs that 10 can really crush, I think documentaries are pretty high on the list, because throwing a huge amount of content into a world that you're creating and needing to access it and pull it together. I mean, you're not following a script. You're trying to create a narrative out of many, 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 many puzzle pieces. That is so database brilliant, to be able to go in as an editor and tag things the way you think, so that you get these oh, maybe it worked better this way kind of idea. Because you have to do that, I would guess, a ton in documentaries, because you're finding the story and then you're rearranging the story and figuring out how the story makes sense. You're moving things around in time. I just think it's having a database linked to your timeline right there, sitting there that you can control, makes that a ton easier. But I see a lot of people who are, I know they have other ways of doing it, and I watch them describe their workflow and their processes and how they organize folders and subfolders and try to do things. And I just keep thinking, wow, this is a really, really good tool for that kind of work. And a sad group of people will never get to do that. They'll probably spend the rest of their careers working without a database. Or it's not a sad thing at all, and they're perfectly content, and that's fine. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe their mind will never work like mine does, glorying in having that instant access to disparate ranges through a database that really helps, I think, organize and find and think about change.
No, absolutely. Why do you think there's so many transcription apps and plugins all of a sudden? There's just 4 or 5 major ones right now.
Well, okay, so there are these bigger things that are happening over the top of the industry, and not just the industry, the whole world. Artificial intelligence, the ability to parse big data sets and all that stuff, is developing outside of us, right? I don't know whether it's Bell Labs or the federal government or whomever, but there's a lot of research going into understanding, categorizing, and parsing and identifying big data sets. So it's getting pointed at audio waveform to text changes. And some of these big cloud services, I don't know if it's Amazon or one of the other, the other ones, they've got this massive computing power, and people who are doing these software things, I think, can tie into that. So one part of it, I think, is just those industries are changing accessibility to the computational aspect of it. But the other thing then is that, it used to be the only people who needed captions were people who are going out to broadcast, right?
Right. Government too.
Right. You're going to do your vertical interval insertion of captions because the government says we have to take care of the folks who can't hear. And you're going, okay, fine. We had that for many years, and here's the way you do captions. Well, now digital's breaking this down, and, the way that people access and understand video, they get it through YouTube, they get it through their desktops, and so it's having to change. And those two things, I think, are just converging at the same time, and this is the year when there's a little bit of an energy nexus for providing all that captioning stuff in how video is changing.
Because I don't even use, I'm working on a couple documentaries, and I don't even use caption or transcriptions and captions to do captioning. I just do them so I can search in Final Cut for keywords or words that I want to go, and I can go to the clip.
Right.
I do everything now. All this stuff, I'm transcribing all of it.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing so much corporate video for so many years, and there was a period where I went through the real crisis of confidence as to whether or not I should get transcripts or not, and what good would they be. And I found it just really program nature dependent. I found a lot of cases I would get a transcript, I would look at the perfect soundbite in the transcript, I would go shuffle to where that was, and I would listen to it and go, that's really flat. Or, no, that doesn't, there's just no, there's too many ums and ahs, and I don't want to Frankenbite this thing. And it looked great on paper.
Frankenbite, I love that.
Yeah. Well, it looked great on paper, but it did not sing to me as a viewer. And so now, there's plenty of uses and plenty of reasons to have that. But for me, it's like when I'm going through and I'm auditioning my core material, I want to, not only was that a good bite, but it's a passionate bite. And he's really, or she looks really convinced of what they're saying. So I'm going to highlight that as a particular keyword collection, or do something. I'm a big advantage of a guy. You try to think outside the boxes in terms of tagging and keywords, and maybe that'll go in my wow folder, because it really was that moment that the kid made eye contact with the camera and said something that moved me. And so I want to know where all those magic moments. So I have a folder called wow that I throw just all sorts of weird stuff in.
Right.
And, if you get inspired while you're editing, you want to be able to let me call up wow and see if there's something in there that'll make this bit of content come alive. That's the excitement of this. And transcripts don't excite me like that. They are important, and your idea of searching on strings of words can be very important. You know, if you need all the paragraphs that say sales and records because you're doing the end of the year video for the big corporation, I totally get that. Yeah, yeah. But we're all getting that. That's part of the changeover you're talking about. All these programs, I think, will be using this AI technology and putting transcription in them, and that's a good thing. We should have that.
We had to do it. I worked for the National Archives.
There you go.
I was a post supervisor for the National Archives for 8.5 years, and we had to do transcription because the federal government's required to.
Yes,
you're provided, but I don't do that. Like I said, I just put them in there, even if they're not 100% accurate. They still have a lot of the keywords. So
there's
85,
value.
Yeah,
there is value to transcriptions. I don't think anybody with any rational thinking about this stuff doesn't understand that's a valuable thing. For me, I don't. It has its value and it has its place. It's not a crutch. I understand. I was talking to Phil Hodges. And he and Greg have Builder, and they're using transcripts very deeply in that. And that tool, if you like to work in that way, if you like to edit by what they're saying and things like that, those things are really fascinating, good tools. I don't want to edit by text most of the time. Maybe there will be a project comes up where it's perfect. You know, maybe it really will. I'll find a way to use it in a way that's perfect. To me, I need to codify the emotion behind what I'm seeing before I codify the words they're saying. If she's mumbling but is in tears talking about this topic, maybe that's more important than the fact that she strung the words together coherently. You know, if this guy is emotionally devastated by what he just witnessed, that he may be completely inarticulate, and that may be the best bite in the whole documentary. So I just can't get apart. It's got a place. It's important. Not the most important thing for me, but that's just how I think.
Well, that doesn't even. I don't necessarily take something that I search for, but at least gets me in the general area. No, I agree. Right. The passion is much more important than anything. Yeah. And same with music, same with that, whatever. I mean, there's mistakes that are made that are kept in songs, and they were better than what they originally wrote. I see it all the time.
It's really funny. I've got this little project. I haven't talked very much about it, but I'm working on this project where I'm talking to a lot of editors all over the world about how they structure their databases. And it's been one of the most interesting things about it is how different people approach their keywords differently. And it's blown me away talking to all these editors and seeing that you can't predict how an editor is going to think about or see or use keywords or the structure of their database in order to get what they want to get done. People who I thought would be, that editor, based on the kind of work they're doing, is probably going to be like the artist who talks about her song in terms of colors.
Sure.
Can you make it a little more turquoise in here or something? And some of those people have been the most structural. And then some people I think, you must be structural. You do this kind of work and you have so many script numbers and you work with so many collaborators that you pop. And then somebody would say, no, I kind of like throw everything under one keyword. What? It's been surprising me. And that's the joy of this software. It's a box of paints and people all use it differently.
Yes,
and that's
exactly
the fun of it.
When somebody says you have to edit my way, you have to use it this way. No, I don't.
You're doing it wrong. You must set up your keywords in this fashion.
Exactly. Well, that's nonsense. I mean, even if somebody is doing it not the most efficient, it's still not. Don't tell me that somebody has to edit your way. That's the only way to do it. That's just a bunch of nonsense.
No, but then you also get these big operations that have a lot of collaboration, and there's this, I don't think it's tension, but there's a balance because, the organization needs things tracked a certain way. Right. And I respect that. Right. Then the assistant editors need to be keywording and touching these things in a certain way for cohesiveness. and then the actual finishing editors or the people who are working at finalizing their stories maybe they want to use all that stuff, but maybe they have different kinds of things they want to do. And it's interesting to me to see how different shops as well, do you give the person at the keyboard, how much power do you give them to manipulate, change, alter, redo, or live within existing structures? Those are all very interesting subjects that I didn't think about much before I started on this project.
Absolutely. That's one of the things about projects is sometimes they teach you.
Well, yeah. And even, like I said, when I was learning 10, the things I failed at the most were the things that taught me the most. I really thought this would be useful. I had a big lesson about keywords. I did a multicam thing that I was working on a jazz band thing, and I had 14 cameras, and I was trying to test out an early version of Final Cut Pro 10 to see if I could do all these cameras. And I got it back, and I was all keyword happening, and I was saying, okay, the saxophone player is playing doing this. I'll key that as saxophone, and the drum solo's here, and I'll key that as drummer, and the rest of that. I got back, and I had probably 40 keywords in my library, and I started putting it together. I went, wait a second, it's multicam. I'm going to edit it as multicam. All I really need to know is song 1, take 1, song 1, take 2, song 2, take 1, song 2, take 2. I need 4 keywords, and I'm going to do the rest live in multicam.
Right.
So
right.
I way overshot my understanding of how or why I would want to keyframe or keyword something because I didn't have the overview down. And I think I've seen a lot of people do that. And it's not wrong, but I see a lot of people who create lots of keywords and only use some of them. And so going back and auditing your projects and saying, we set it up this way. What did we really use? And what didn't we use?
Yep.
And were there strategies I can dump and get rid of because I think they're important, but they're really not important to the kind of work I want to do most? It's an interesting topic. So
I've already said, without any insider information, that I think Michael Cioni is going to be there. The other thing that I think is going to happen is that Bill Davis is going to recreate his scene from Off the Tracks at the first when Final Cut Pro was introduced. I remember when I was helping Brad edit that the first year he was editing it. I said, where is Bill Davis? And he showed me. He's on that still frame. I said, okay, well, let's highlight him. Highlight him because I really can't make him out so much. I don't know where to thank you or be embarrassed about that because it was one of those things where, that was an interesting NAB. We all had an interesting creative summit. We had a lot of things to do. And I remember young Brad, nobody knew who he was, but He was doing this thing. And I've never seen him this tired before. He was working so tirelessly. Right. So I was scheduled at one point, then I was scheduled at another point, and things got in the way, and the interviews went long, and the rest of that. So I think we did that like at 6 o'clock in the morning or something ridiculous like that. Wow. He dragged himself out of bed, and I dragged myself out of bed, and we went, and I got in front of the camera, and I probably didn't comb my hair, the rest of that stuff. But, at some point, you just got to forget about all that stuff and say, I was lucky enough I was there, I saw something, I think something important about this, and I would like to express that point. And there was so much talk on the web about that original debut and the launch of Final Cut. We all know how complicated it was. Yep. And I'm not sure if the full story of everything behind the scenes will ever come out of that, nor should it. But it was really a fascinating moment in this industry is being challenged in a way it had not been challenged before. Yep. Editors were challenged in ways they had not been challenged before. Every NLE up to this one did things largely the same way. Yep, absolutely. You got tracks, all your audio's down here, all your video's up here. You put dissolves on things, all this stuff is the same. And then this thing comes up and it's like, a lot of it looks the same, but that's not how it works. Absolutely not. So I'll be around. I'm planning on being there. I haven't heard from my sponsor yet, but I'm planning on being there Sunday. Good. So we'll maybe hook up for lunch or whatever.
Absolutely. I'll be there Sunday, I'm sure. I'll probably be there Sunday. I may go home Wednesday because I'm past that point in my career where I want to buy a lot of stuff. But if there's an after party Wednesday night, I might stay till Thursday.
I think the after party is Tuesday night. I think that's it. It's a combination of everything.
Yeah.
You know, because yeah.
I would like there to be. I'm hoping, and I think that Sam and those guys are working really good. I'd like to see focus. We've had these. There's a full day schedule on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and just from my going to NAB for so many years, there's something you really want to see that's Tuesday in the afternoon, but you found something in that crazy cacophony of the NAB show floor, and somebody says, I can talk to you about this, but at 3 o'clock, and you're going, oh man, 3:30 is that thing I wanted to see over at Faster Together or at the LumaForge stage or at something, FCP Works event. And you can't get to it, so you miss that. And so I'm hoping that this evening thing maybe coalesces some of that, and it's a little less diffuse and a little more focused.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So I haven't definitely confirmed that I'm going yet. Like I said, I have to hear from my sponsors and stuff, but I'm planning on it. I'm planning on it being the same as it has been for the next couple of years. So I'm going to have another one of these as we get closer to NAB. I'll bring you back, and we'll do NAB tips and tricks kind of a thing, things people should know. That you've taught me a lot of things over the last couple of years. That the first year I was there, I was going, oh, wow, Bill was really right about this.
Well, that's just experience. NAB is an overwhelming place the first time you go.
Well, I didn't use Uber last year.
Okay.
I used it when I went to see Off the Tracks in Hollywood in June last year. I used it, and I used it all the time. Now I know how it works. Now I can use it when I get to NAB. I don't have to worry about, well, how am I going to get home from someplace? You just pull up Uber, and they'll come pick you up.
There's all sorts of possibilities. I mean, I always stay at a hotel adjacent to the monorail, and I just mostly monorail back and forth during the day. That means I'm only looking for transport at night. And, some hotels, I'm in a hotel with a lot of friends, and we just call each other from the room and go, okay, everybody want to share a cab or share an Uber or share a Lyft or share something? And we all go, yeah. So there's 6 of us piling. A few years ago, Sen Papa and who was it? One of the guys he works with had a car. They drove to NAB. So it's like, hey, Bill, come on, just hop in the car and we'll go places. And I had more fun at that NAB because I didn't know those guys, and it was great talking. I got to tell you, in past NABs, the people in the cabs, on the trains, in the public transit, you would see somebody else with an NAB badge, and you would have these great conversations.
Sure.
And they didn't all become friends that you stuck with for years, but it's great to get out in the community. And your chances are high that you will find yourself. I found myself in maybe year 3 or 4 sharing the cab with a guy from one of the big radio networks, and it was fun talking to him. And then a couple of years later, I was with a bunch of engineers from, I can't remember if it was Tektronix or one of those big things, and I just happened to mention cutting audio tape in the early part of my career, and they all these were relatively young guys, and they all said, you used to cut physical tape with a razor blade.
Demagnetized razor blades, absolutely.
And it was absolutely fun to just bridge that gap between me at 40-something and them at 20-something and saying, yeah, there were all these techniques we had to use back in the early days.
So we're going to, I think, end up here, stop here, but I'm going to put up where you find your tickets.
Good.
Right now.
Book early because ticket, rooms, low rate rooms, sign-ups for things, it tends to go quick, and earlier rather than later is usually a good thing.
So fastertogether.com, go there, and you can buy tickets and use the discount code Jellyfish2019. You save $5. People don't know this, but that discount code can also be used to get $5 off a Jellyfish.
Oh, there you go.
It's a dual purpose discount code. Now, if they don't give it to you, you tell them, but I said that they should give you $5 off.
Yeah, and if you buy a jellyfish, you can go up to Sam, and Sam will give you $5 in cash, probably.
Exactly.
Or Patrick, or anybody with a LumaForge badge. If you buy a jellyfish, I'm sure they'll give you $5, or buy you a cup of coffee at any, whichever is least expensive.
Absolutely. So everybody that's watching, if you're going to NAB, stop and say hi to me. Stop and say hi to Bill.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. We'll be more than glad to talk to you and give you any tips that we have. But like I said, I'll have another one of these closer at NAB. Get Michael on, you on, and some other people.
Absolutely.
We'll have a tips and tricks for NAB specifically when we get closer to the actual event.
Yeah, thank you.
And we're going to have some more news about the lineup coming up shortly on Final Cut Pro Radio TV. That's coming up, but I can't.
Folks behind the scenes are working really hard to get to get interesting people who not only know what they're doing because can present it well, and that will be. I think they're looking for as much inspiration. One thing that I think I can say publicly is in one of our first meetings, Sam specifically said to me, we're trying not to have people just selling stuff from the stage. That's not what this is about. We want to have people up there telling you something that excites you about the production industry. And I think that's what this is going to largely be built around.
Absolutely. All right, Bill. I sure appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks for the time, Richard. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll be in touch again. You can hang on for just a second. I'm going to finish the live stream. Everybody, thank you for stopping in.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm going to just post that real quick. And I will talk to you on the next Final Cut Pro Radio TV Live. Talk to you everybody later.